New York City, late afternoon. The sky was clear. The streets were loud. Then the first blast hit the pavement like a hammer. A metal giant stepped out of the smoke. Its face was smooth and blank. Its eyes glowed. It raised one arm, and a beam cut across the road. Cars skidded. People screamed and ran in every direction. Aurora Monroe moved before she even finished breathing in. Storm dropped from above with a snap of wind. Her white hair streamed behind her. Her eyes turned bright and pale. The air around her changed. It got cooler. The dust lifted off the ground like it was being pulled by invisible hands. "Everyone, get back," she shouted, loud enough to cut through panic. "Move away from the machine." A second sentinel landed behind the first. The ground shook. It aimed at a group of people trapped near a bus stop. Storm's fingers curled. A wall of wind hit the bus stop and pushed civilians back, just enough to save them from the blast that followed. The beam struck the street instead. Asphalt cracked. Shards jumped into the air. Scott Summers came in from the left, sliding to a stop with perfect balance. Cyclops did not waste time looking scared. He looked like a man counting exits. "Wolverine, right side," he called. "Storm, keep the civilians moving, I'll draw fire." Logan was already moving, faster than he should have been for someone built like that. He launched himself at the sentinel's leg, claws out, jaw tight. Phones were out everywhere. People filmed from behind cars and street signs. Some shouted, "X-Men," like it was a chant. Others cried and begged for help. Then the street went strangely quiet in one small spot. Not because the fight stopped, because the air there folded. A thin rip opened between two buildings. It did not glow like a portal. It looked like a tear filled with deep shadow. The edges shook like a black curtain in a strong wind. Storm felt it first. Not with her weather sense. With something older. A pressure, like a storm about to form without clouds. Cyclops turned his head a fraction. "What is that?" The shadow tear widened. A man fell out of it and landed in a three-point stance, one hand on the ground. No stumble, no panic. He rose with a smooth, careful motion, like someone stepping into a dangerous room. He looked young. Dark hair, dark eyes, plain black clothes. No costume, no symbol. But his posture was wrong for a normal person. Too calm, too ready. He looked at the sentinels like they were a problem on a list. A beam fired at him without warning. He did not flinch. A sheet of black rose in front of him. It was not smoke. It was not a shield someone could touch. It was shadow made solid for a moment. The beam hit it and bent away, carving a line into a nearby wall instead. Storm's breath caught. "That's not." The man took one step forward, just one, and the shadows on the street moved. They spread under him like ink spilling across water. But it did not spread wildly. It spread with control. Shapes rose out of it. Humans made of darkness stood up in silence, one after another. Some held weapons that looked old. Some looked like knights. They did not groan or stagger. They stood straight, like soldiers waiting for a command. Cyclops snapped into leader mode. "Storm. Wind barrier between civilians and that group. Wolverine. Fall back 2 steps. Don't get surrounded." Logan did not like being told to step away from anything, ever. But even he hesitated when 2 shadow soldiers rose behind the sentinel he was attacking. "Hey," Logan growled at the newcomer. "You controlling those things?" The man's eyes flicked to Wolverine. His voice was calm and even. "Where is the boss?" Cyclops narrowed his eyes. "We don't have time for games. Identify yourself." The man looked back at the sentinel. He moved again. He was suddenly closer, like he cut space without running. Storm felt the air shift. Not wind, something else. Like the world blinked. The man's hand reached out. A shadow chain snapped up from the pavement and wrapped the sentinel's arm. It yanked. The metal giant's balance broke for half a second. That half second was enough. A shadow soldier with a great sword moved in a clean line and struck the sentinel's knee joint. Another stabbed into the back of the calf. The sentinel tried to adjust, but it was fighting something that did not fear pain and did not slow down. Cyclops fired a controlled optic blast at the Sentinel's chest to push it away from the crowd. Storm sent a sharp gust to clear smoke and keep people from running back into danger. For one moment, the X-Men and the stranger fought on the same side without agreeing to it. Then a new sound cut through everything. A high, cold whine. Something small and fast zipped above them. A drone, not a news drone. This one moved too smoothly. Its lens focused on the stranger's shadow soldiers. It hovered just long enough to record. Storm saw it and reached up with wind to knock it down. The drone shot upward, escaping like it knew she would try. Cyclops tracked it with his eyes. That wasn't civilian. The stranger's gaze followed the drone for the first time. His calm face did not change. But Storm felt something in the air shift anyway, like a warning. A third sentinel dropped in from above, bigger, heavier. Its chest opened, showing a ring of lights like a weapon charging. Civilians screamed again. Someone fell. A child cried out near a toppled stroller. Storm pushed wind toward the child, trying to reach them. The stranger moved first. He appeared beside the stroller as if he had stepped through the shadow under it. He grabbed the stroller with one hand and pulled it back behind a car. The child's cry turned into shocked silence. The big sentinel fired. A wide beam tore across the street. The stranger raised his hand. The shadows surged up like a wall, thicker than before. The beam hit it and did not break through. The wall shook. The ground under it cracked. But it held. Cyclops stared for a heartbeat too long. Logan looked at the stranger like he was trying to smell a lie. Storm felt a cold thought form in her mind. If this man was a mutant, he was not like any mutant she had ever seen. The shadow wall dropped. The stranger's eyes stayed locked on the big sentinel. He spoke again. Not loud, but clear. "Fine," he said. "I'll start with you." And behind him, the shadows gathered like an army waiting for war. The X-Men did not bring strangers to the Xavier Institute lightly. They brought this one anyway, because they had watched him hold off a sentinel beam with darkness like it was a normal thing, because they had watched shadow soldiers move like trained fighters, because they had watched him save a child without even looking for praise, and because Cyclops did not like leaving unknown weapons on the streets. The blackbird cut through the sky. Inside, Scott stood with his arms crossed, watching the newcomer from the corner of his eye. Storm sat across from Scott. Her face was calm, but her thoughts were not. She had met gods and monsters before. She had seen magic in strange places. This still felt different. Logan leaned against the wall near the back, half-shadowed. He did not sit. He never fully relaxed. The newcomer sat with his hands resting on his knees, back straight. He looked out the window like he was checking distances. Scott broke the silence first. "You helped us." "Good. Now talk. Who are you?" The young man turned his head. "Sung Jin-Woo." His words were simple. No title. No speech. Scott waited for more. Jin-Woo's eyes moved to Scott's visor, then to Storm's white hair, then to Logan's claws. He looked at them like he was learning a map. "What are you?" Logan asked. "You smell wrong." Jin-Woo did not react like someone insulted. "I'm human." Logan's brow lowered. "No." Storm spoke softly but firm. "Where did you come from, Jin-Woo?" He looked back out the window. "Not here." Scott kept his voice level. "Those things you summoned, are they alive?" Jin-Woo's face stayed calm. "They follow my orders." "That wasn't the question," Scott said. Jin-Woo finally looked straight at him. "They were people." Storm felt a chill in her chest at the plain way he said it. Logan's claws slid out with a quiet snick. "You raising the dead?" Jin-Woo's gaze flicked to the claws. He did not flinch. "They're my soldiers." Scott lifted a hand slightly, a silent signal to Logan. "Not yet." Storm watched Jin-Woo's eyes. She saw no joy in the idea of death, no thrill, just control, like a hunter carrying a heavy tool. "Why did you protect that child?" Storm asked. Jin-Woo answered as if it should be obvious. "Because they would die." Scott's jaw tightened. "That's not how everyone thinks." Jin-Woo's eyes went distant for a moment. "I know." The jet landed at the Institute. The mansion looked peaceful, too peaceful for the chaos that followed the X-Men everywhere. Inside, The halls were quieter. Students peeked from corners. Some looked excited. Some looked scared. Jin-Woo noticed all of them. Storm saw it. He did not stare at their faces first. He stared at their hands, their posture, the exits around them, like he expected danger in every room. Professor Charles Xavier waited in his office, his chair turned slightly toward the door. His expression was kind, but his eyes were sharp. "Welcome," Xavier said. "I am Charles Xavier." Jin-Woo nodded once. Sung Jin-Woo. "Thank you for helping in the city," Xavier said. "We would like to understand what happened. You arrived through something." Jin-Woo's eyes shifted, just a little. A gate. Beast stood beside Xavier with a tablet in hand. Hank McCoy's eyes were bright with curiosity. "A gate," Hank repeated, tasting the word. "Like a portal? Like an opening between places?" Jin-Woo's answer was short. "Yes." Hank smiled as if he had just been handed the best mystery in the world. Wonderful. Terrifying. But mostly wonderful. Logan snorted. "Speak for yourself, Blue." Xavier lifted a hand gently. "Hank, Scott, Aurora, Logan, give us a moment." They did not leave the room fully. Not really. They moved to the edges, close enough to react. Xavier rolled forward slightly. "Jin-Woo, we help people who are feared for their powers. We call them mutants." Jin-Woo listened. Xavier continued. "The machines you fought. Sentinels. They are built to hunt mutants." Jin-Woo's eyes narrowed a fraction. "They hunt people." "Yes," Xavier said. Jin-Woo did not look shocked. He looked like someone hearing a familiar story in a new language. Xavier's voice stayed calm. "I am going to ask a difficult question. May I?" Jin-Woo nodded. Xavier touched 2 fingers to his temple. A simple gesture. A sign. "May I look into your mind? Only enough to confirm your intent." Storm watched Jin-Woo closely. He did not look afraid. He looked cautious. "I won't fight you here," Jin-Woo said. "But don't push too far." Xavier's eyes softened. Understood. Xavier reached out with his telepathy like a careful hand. For a second, Storm felt the psychic pressure in the air, like a soft hum. She was used to it. It was Xavier's gift. Xavier's face changed. Not fear. Not pain. More like surprise. "It's blocked," Xavier said quietly. Hank blinked. "Blocked? By what? A mental shield? A technology?" Xavier's brow furrowed. "It feels like a door. A very old door." Jin-Woo said nothing. Logan's posture tightened. "Told you. Wrong." Scott stepped forward. "Professor, can you read anything?" "Intent," Xavier said. "He is not here to hunt our students. He is not here to kill for pleasure. But there is a darkness around his thoughts. Not evil. Something else. A weight." Storm's throat tightened. That word fit. Weight. Xavier looked at Jin-Woo again. "You asked for the boss in the street. Why?" Jin-Woo answered with simple truth. "Where I'm from, monsters come in waves. When the weak ones show up, it means something stronger is near." Hank's eyes widened. "Monsters. Literal monsters." Jin-Woo nodded once. Xavier spoke gently. "Tell us about your world. Just a little. In your own words." Jin-Woo's gaze lowered for a moment. When he spoke, he gave clean pieces, like stepping stones. "I was weak," he said. "I almost died." Storm listened, holding still. "I went into gates," Jin-Woo continued. "Places with monsters." Hank whispered, "Like pocket worlds." Jin-Woo kept going. "I survived. I got stronger. There was a system. It made me grow." Hank's head tilted. "A system?" Jin-Woo glanced at him. "Like rules only I can see." Hank's fingers twitched as if he wanted to grab a notebook and never stop writing. "I became the Shadow Monarch," Jin-Woo said at last, voice still calm. The title landed like a stone in water. Logan bared his teeth. "That sounds like a bad guy name." Jin-Woo looked at him. "It's just what it is." Xavier did not flinch at the title. He just asked, "And you protect people?" Jin-Woo's eyes flicked to the hallway where students watched from a distance. If I don't, they die. Storm felt something in her chest soften, just a little. Scott did not soften. He only shifted into planning mode. Rules, Scott said. If you stay here, there are rules. Jin-Woo's gaze returned to Scott. Say them. Scott spoke clearly, like he was giving a mission briefing. No summoning soldiers in the school halls. Not near students. Not without warning. You do not leave the grounds without telling someone, and if you feel a gate or anything like it, you tell us first. Jin-Woo listened. Then he said, I can agree to most of that. Scott's eyes narrowed. Most? Jin-Woo's voice stayed calm but hard at the center. I won't be trapped. Xavier nodded, understanding the fear behind the words. No one will trap you here, Jin-Woo, but we will protect our students. That is not negotiable. Jin-Woo held Xavier's gaze. After a moment, he nodded. Hank cleared his throat, trying not to sound too excited. He failed. May I run some tests? Non-invasive. Blood sample, energy scans. I have never seen shadows behave like soldiers. Storm finished quietly. Hank smiled. Yes, like soldiers. Jin-Woo stood. The room's shadows shifted under him, almost like they listened. I'll do your tests, Jin-Woo said. But don't lie to me. Scott almost smiled at the bluntness. Almost. Over the next hour, Jin-Woo was scanned, tested, and watched. Hank's machines beeped and whined. Screens filled with strange readings. Heat maps, energy lines, magnetic waves. None of it matched any mutant profile Hank knew. It's not simply a mutation, Hank said, voice lower now. It behaves like a separate space connected to him, like he carries a pocket of night. Jin-Woo sat still while needles and sensors did their work. He did not ask questions. He watched Hank's hands, Xavier's eyes, Scott's posture. Storm stepped closer. How do you feel about being here? Jin-Woo's answer came after a pause. It's quiet. And that bothers you? Storm asked. Jin-Woo's eyes did not move. Quiet never lasts. A student's voice sounded from the doorway. A young girl, maybe 12. Her hands were shaking, but she stepped forward anyway. Are you a ghost king? She asked. Hank winced. Scott's shoulders tightened. Logan's eyes sharpened. Jin-Woo turned to her. His face stayed calm. He did not smile, but his voice was not cruel. No, he said. I'm not here to hurt you. The girl swallowed. Those soldiers, are they going to eat us? Logan snorted. Kid's got a point. Jin-Woo looked at the floor. A thin shadow curled near his shoe, like a small wave. Nothing rose. Nothing attacked. They only move when I tell them, Jin-Woo said, and I won't tell them to hurt you. The girl nodded fast and backed away, then ran. Storm watched Jin-Woo. She saw something behind the calm. Not sadness exactly, more like someone who knew fear too well. Later that night, Xavier invited Jin-Woo to a room with a bed, a window, and a simple desk. It's yours if you wish, Xavier said. No locks. Jin-Woo looked at the room, then at the hallway beyond it. He nodded once. Scott waited until Xavier was gone, then stepped closer. I'm going to be direct, Scott said. You showed up out of nowhere. Machines that hunt mutants showed up fast. That means someone else saw you. Someone else is planning. Jin-Woo answered without offense. Good. Scott blinked. Good? Jin-Woo looked at him like the idea was simple. If they plan, they can be hunted. Scott did not like how that sounded, but he respected that it was honest. Logan walked past Scott, stopping at Jin-Woo's doorway. You hurt kids, Logan said. You don't get a second chance. Jin-Woo met his eyes. Same. Logan held the stare for a beat, then walked away. Storm came last. She stood in the doorway, soft but steady. You are not alone here, she said. Jin-Woo's face did not change much, but his voice dropped slightly, like he meant it. I'm always alone, he said, even with people around. Storm understood that kind of loneliness. Downstairs, in a secured room, Cerebro's screens glowed faintly. Xavier stood alone for a moment, fingers pressed to his temple again. He tried once more to sense Jin-Woo's mind, not to break in, just to feel the edges. The door was still there, old, heavy, and behind it, something vast waited without moving. Xavier opened his eyes and whispered to himself, "This world will notice you soon." As if to prove him right, far away in the city, a hidden drone fed footage into a clean white lab. A screen paused on Jin-Woo's shadow soldiers, frozen mid-rise. A voice in the room said, calm and satisfied, "There, that's our anomaly." And the next plan began. 2 days later, it happened fast. A call came in from the city, not from the police, not from the news. From a mutant friend who did not trust official lines. "Sentinels," the voice said, shaking. "They're coming underground. They're sweeping." Cyclops was already moving before the call ended. "Storm, with me. Jean, ready on standby. Logan, your point." Logan rolled his shoulders. Finally, Hank looked up from his lab, eyes wide. "Scott, if they're sweeping underground, they're going for people who can't run." Scott finished. Storm felt her stomach tighten. She knew what that meant. Morlocks. Mutants who lived hidden because the surface world hated their faces. Jin-Woo stood in the hall, watching them prepare like it was routine. "It's a raid," he said. Scott paused. "A what?" Jin-Woo looked at him. Serious as ever. "A raid. A group enters. They clear threats. They protect the weak." Hank blinked hard. "That's surprisingly accurate." Logan scoffed. "We call it a rescue." Jin-Woo nodded once. "Same thing." Scott hesitated for half a second. Then he made the choice he did not like, but needed. "You're coming," Scott said to Jin-Woo. "But you follow my calls." Jin-Woo's eyes narrowed slightly. Not anger. Testing. "Call it," Jin-Woo said. The Blackbird flew low and fast. Under the city, the tunnels smelled like rust, whetstone, and fear. Storm's heart pounded as they dropped into the dark. Jean's eyes were focused, scanning minds ahead like a lighthouse searching a stormy sea. Then the tunnel lit up with harsh white light. A sentinel unit stepped into view, smaller than the street giants but built for tight spaces. Its limbs folded and unfolded like knives. Behind it, more shapes moved. Drones, crawlers, machines with nets. "Orches," Scott said under his breath, recognizing the pattern. "They're organized." The first machine spoke in a flat voice. "Mutant presence detected. Comply for processing." Logan's claws slid out. "Yeah, no." The machine raised an arm. Jin-Woo moved. Shadow poured out across the tunnel floor, flowing around rubble and pipes like it knew the path. Soldiers rose silently, filling the space behind him in neat lines, their eyes like small points of cold light. Storm felt it again, that pressure. That weight. Scott forced himself not to stare. "Storm, cover civilians. Jean, keep minds calm. Logan, take out the net launchers." Jin-Woo. Jin-Woo looked back. "Rank?" Scott frowned. "What?" Hank shouted from behind, unable to help himself. "He means priority." Scott exhaled once, sharp. "High priority. Stop the sweep." Jin-Woo nodded. "S rank." Logan barked a laugh, even as he ran. "This guy's nuts." The fight exploded in the tunnel. Logan became a blur of claws and metal sparks, slicing net guns before they fired. Storm lifted her hands and pulled wind through a place where wind should not exist, pushing dust and smoke away from trapped mutants hiding behind broken walls. Jean reached into nearby mines and pushed calm into panic, gentle but firm, like holding a child's shoulders steady. Cyclops planted his feet and fired controlled blasts down the tunnel, not wide beams, not wild power, just enough force to push machines back without collapsing the ceiling. Jin-Woo stepped forward like he owned the dark. His shadow soldiers met the sentinels head-on. A sentinel tried to grab one soldier by the neck. The soldier did not choke. It stabbed up into the machine's shoulder joint and kept pushing until the arm tore away. Another machine fired a beam meant to erase shadows. Jin-Woo raised a hand, and the shadows shifted, thinning and moving aside like a school of fish avoiding a net. The beam struck empty stone. Scott saw that and felt a flash of surprise. He's not just strong, he's precise. A group of Morlocks huddled in a side tunnel, children and older mutants, eyes wide with terror. One small boy had a face like scales. His hands shook as he held onto his mother's arm. Storm moved toward them. "Come with me," she said softly. "Stay behind the wind." The mother stared past Storm at Jin-Woo's army. "Is that yours?" Storm did not lie. "Yes." The mother's fear doubled. "Then we're dead anyway." Storm's chest tightened. This was the cruelty of this world. Even help could look like horror. "We are not here to hurt you," Storm said, voice steady. "We are here because someone wants you gone." A loud crash cut her off. A new unit dropped from a ceiling hatch, landing like it weighed a truck. It was different. Its body was cleaner. Its movements were smoother. Its eyes were not simple lights. They were focused, almost aware. Jean's head snapped up. Her face went pale. "That one," Jean whispered. "That one feels wrong." The machine's voice was calm, almost polite. "Designation: Nimrod." Scott's blood went cold. He knew that name from whispered reports, from futures nobody wanted. Nimrod's head turned slightly, scanning, learning. Its eyes landed on Jin-Woo. For one long second, nothing moved. Then Nimrod lifted one hand and fired a thin beam, not at Jin-Woo, but at the shadow under Jin-Woo's feet. The beam hit the darkness itself. The shadow flinched like it could feel pain. Jin-Woo's eyes sharpened. The first crack in his comm showed, small but real. Nimrod fired again, this time in a pattern, like it was testing. Jin-Woo's shadow soldiers shifted formation without being told, spreading, changing angles. Scott watched. Nimrod watched too. Nimrod's tone stayed flat. Anomalous energy source detected. Shadow constructs. Threat classification, unknown. Adaptation protocol engaged. Logan lunged for Nimrod's leg. Nimrod didn't even turn fully. It backhanded Logan with a clean, brutal motion. Logan flew into a wall, hard. The stone cracked. He dropped to one knee, breath knocked out. Storm's eyes widened. "Logan." Logan shook his head once, already healing, already furious. "I'm fine." Scott fired at Nimrod's torso. Nimrod shifted its stance and angled its body. The blast still hit, still pushed it back a step, but Nimrod adjusted, like it had expected the force. Jean reached out with telekinesis, trying to pin Nimrod. Nimrod's systems flared. It resisted, not fully breaking free, but not stuck either. Jean's jaw tightened. "It's fighting my grip." Jin-Woo stepped forward, voice low. "It learns." Scott's mind raced. "Jin-Woo, can you erase it?" Jin-Woo did not answer yes. He did not answer no. He answered honestly. "I can kill it," he said, "but it will try to kill others first." As if to prove it, Nimrod's head turned toward the side tunnel where the Morlocks were. It fired a net launcher, fast. Storm threw wind at it. The net still clipped the tunnel edge and snapped into place like a trap. A child screamed. Storm's heart lurched. She moved. Jin-Woo was already there. He stepped into the shadow and appeared by the net. His hand touched the dark under it, and the shadow surged up and sliced the net apart like blades made of night. He did not look at the child after. He looked back at Nimrod. Nimrod watched him do it. Then Nimrod's arm changed shape. It became a tool designed to target shadows. Scott felt his stomach drop. "It's upgrading in real time." Hank's voice crackled through a comm link from the jet above. "Scott, I'm reading a shift in its energy output. It's changing frequency." Scott gritted his teeth. "We noticed, Hank." Nimrod fired a wide pulse down the tunnel. This one was not a normal beam. It was a wash of light that stuck to shadows like paint. Two shadow soldiers flickered. Their edges broke apart. Jin-Woo's eyes narrowed. He lifted his hand. The shadows pulled back, not retreating in fear, but retreating like a general choosing better ground. Then Jin-Woo stepped forward alone. The air around him felt colder. Storm watched him and felt a strange mix of fear and relief. like seeing a lion step between you and a gun. Jin-Woo spoke, voice calm, almost bored. "You want me," he said. "Fine." Nimrod responded instantly. "Correct." It lunged. Jin-Woo did not dodge backward. He moved in. They collided in the middle of the tunnel, metal and shadow meeting with a shockwave that made dust fall from the ceiling. Jin-Woo's fist slammed into Nimrod's chest. Nimrod slid back 3 feet, boots grinding into stone. Logan stared. Even Logan looked impressed for half a second. Nimrod swung a blade arm at Jin-Woo's head. Jin-Woo tilted his body. The blade missed by inches. He grabbed Nimrod's wrist with one hand. With the other hand, he pulled. A chain of shadow wrapped Nimrod's arm and yanked it down. Jin-Woo drove his knee into Nimrod's elbow joint and cracked it with raw force. Nimrod's arm tore free and reformed, as if pain was only a suggestion. Jean's eyes widened. It's rebuilding itself. Scott's voice stayed tight and sharp. "We can't let this drag out. The tunnel won't hold forever." Storm raised her hands and sent wind through the tunnel again, guiding civilians and Morlocks back toward safer passages. She shouted, "Move, now!" Cyclops turned to Jin-Woo for one moment, making a decision he hated making. "Jin-Woo," Scott called. "We need a finish or a retreat. Pick." Jin-Woo's eyes flicked to the frightened people behind Storm. Then back to Nimrod. He made his choice. The floor under Nimrod darkened. A wide shadow circle spread out, fast and clean, like a spell drawn by a blade. Nimrod paused for half a heartbeat, as if it sensed danger. Jin-Woo's voice dropped, quiet but absolute. "Arise," he said. The shadows behind him erupted. A larger figure rose from the darkness. Not a crowd soldier. A commander. Taller, heavier, wearing armor that looked like it belonged on an ancient battlefield. Its eyes glowed. Storm felt the air tighten. Even Scott, who had trained with gods, felt his skin prickle. Nimrod reacted instantly. It fired a pulse at the commander. The commander took the hit and did not stop. It stepped forward and slammed its weapon into the ground. The impact sent a shock through the tunnel. Machines staggered. Jin-Woo moved with the commander like they were one unit. He shadow-stepped to Nimrod's flank and struck Nimrod's head with a clean punch, turning it just enough. The commander brought its blade down on Nimrod's shoulder joint. Nimrod's armor split. Nimrod tried to pull away. Jin-Woo's shadow chain wrapped around Nimrod's waist and yanked it back. For the first time, Nimrod's voice changed. Not fear, but focus. "Threat level escalating," Nimrod said. "Primary objective, acquire sample." A small drone slipped from Nimrod's back and shot toward Jin-Woo's shadow circle. Scott spotted it. "Drone." Jean reached for it with telekinesis. The drone fired a tiny burst of light at Jean's hand in midair. Not enough to hurt her, but enough to break her hold for a second. The drone dipped, scooped something from the edge of Jin-Woo's shadow like it grabbed a piece of living darkness and zipped away into a vent shaft. Hank's voice crackled again. "Scott, something just left the battlefield. Fast. Tiny. I can't." "We saw it," Scott snapped. Jin-Woo's eyes followed the vent shaft. His calm face hardened. Nimrod used that moment. It launched backward, smashing through a support wall. Stone fell. Pipes burst. Water sprayed. It did not run like a coward. It retreated like a machine that decided the next fight would be easier with better tools. Scott started forward. "We can't let it." The ceiling groaned. Storm looked up and felt her blood turn cold. "Scott, the tunnel." Cyclops saw it too. If they chased, they would bury everyone here. He made the call, because that was what he did. "Fall back," Scott shouted. "Evac now. Storm, clear the line. Jean, shield the mines. Logan, cover the rear." Logan growled, furious, but he moved. Yeah. Jin-Woo glanced at Nimrod's escape route. Then he glanced at the Morlocks. His jaw tightened. He did not chase. He stayed. He lifted one hand, and the shadows surged up like a roof beam, holding the ceiling long enough for people to run under it. Storm guided the last group through with wind, pushing smoke away so they could breathe. Jean held a mental calm over the crowd, stopping a stampede. Scott fired blasts into weak stone supports to redirect falling debris away from the evacuation path. For a moment, it worked. Then the tunnel behind them collapsed anyway, sealing the retreat route with rubble. Silence slammed down after the noise. People coughed and cried. But they were alive. Storm looked at Jin-Woo. His shadow commander stood behind him like a statue. Scott stepped up, breathing hard. You chose them. Jin-Woo looked at him. That's the point. Logan spat dust. Yeah, you did good, Shadow Guy. It sounded like a compliment coming from Logan. In his own rough way, it was. Above ground, the fight became news before the dust even settled. A few minutes later, screens across the city played shaky footage of a man in black calling an army of darkness to fight killer machines. A headline rolled across one screen in big letters. Necro-Mutant King spotted in subway battle. Storm stared at the headline from a phone someone handed her, disgusted. They don't even know his name, she said. Scott's mouth was a tight line. They know enough to fear him. Jin-Woo looked at the screen for 1 second. Then he looked away. Far away, in a clean white lab, a small container sat under a bright light. Inside it, a piece of shadow moved like it was alive. A calm voice said, "Now we can start." And somewhere in the city, a machine that learned too fast stood still in the dark, already changing itself for the next encounter. The morning after the tunnel battle, the world acted like it had known Sung Jin-Woo forever. Every screen showed the same shaky clips, a dark wave across stone, silent soldiers rising from the floor, a man in plain black standing in front of a panicked crowd like he was a wall. People did not ask who he was. They decided what he was. At the Xavier Institute, Storm stood in the common room with her arms folded, watching the news with a hard, steady face. She hated how fast fear traveled, faster than truth, faster than help. The anchor on one channel spoke with a tight smile. Some are calling him the Necro-Mutant King. Others say he could be a new level of mutant threat. The government has not confirmed his identity, but sources claim he was seen commanding undead creatures. Storm reached out and turned the volume down. The room was still loud anyway, because students had their own phones. A teenager with goggles whispered to a friend, "He's like a final boss." Another student whispered back, "He's like a villain from a horror movie." Storm kept her voice calm. "He saved people." A third student, younger, hugged her own arms. "So did Magneto once. Then he—" "Enough," Storm said, not loud but strong enough to cut the room. The kids went quiet. Scott Summers walked in with a tablet in hand and a face that looked like he had not slept. He had a list. He always had a list. "Professor wants a team meeting in 5, he said. Logan followed him in, shirt torn at the collar like he had tried to rip stress in half. He tossed a piece of metal on the table, a broken sentinel part from the tunnel, bent like it had been folded. "They're upgrading," Logan said. "That Nimrod thing? It didn't flinch. It didn't even get mad. It just learned." Hank McCoy walked in behind them, already talking as he walked. "I have reviewed the footage frame by frame," Beast said, eyes bright and tired at the same time. "The shadow constructs show discipline. Actual formation changes. That implies command logic, which implies—" Logan pointed a claw at him. "Blue. English." Beast blinked, then tried again. "He is not throwing shadows around like smoke. He is using them like trained soldiers." Scott didn't look away from his tablet, which makes him either a huge help or a huge problem. Storm looked toward the hall. "He's still in his room." Scott nodded. "Good. Keep it that way until we're aligned." Logan snorted. "You gonna keep him anywhere?" Scott's jaw tightened. "We're going to talk. We're going to set rules. If he's staying, he follows them." Storm stepped closer. "Scott, he is not one of our students. He is not our prisoner. He is a person who fell into a world that wants to cage him. And he is a person who can summon an army in our living room." Scott shot back. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. That changes our risk. That changes our responsibility. Beast held up a hand, trying to soothe the air. "We need information before we decide what he is." Logan's eyes narrowed. I already know what he is. Storm turned to him. Then say it. Logan's voice dropped. A storm with a face. If he turns, we don't stop it. That hung in the room like smoke. They walked into Xavier's office together. Professor X sat behind his desk, calm as always, but Storm could see it in his eyes. He was worried. Not about himself. About everyone. Jin-Woo stood near the window with his hands at his sides. He wasn't pacing. He wasn't nervous. He looked out at the trees like he was listening for something that wasn't there. Scott didn't waste time. The world has a name for you now. Jin-Woo turned his head slightly. I didn't give them one. Storm watched his face. No anger, no surprise, just acceptance like he expected it. Xavier spoke gently. You protected people. That matters. Jin-Woo nodded once. It was the mission. Beast's ears perked. Mission? Like a task assigned by your system? Jin-Woo glanced at Hank, then back to Xavier. I assign my own now. Hank looked both thrilled and frustrated, like a kid told he could read a book but only the cover. Scott tapped his tablet. Orches is using your footage to push new laws. They're calling for emergency measures, registration, detention, more Sentinel funding. Storm's voice turned cold. They always do. Scott looked at Jin-Woo. And now you're part of the story, whether you want to be or not. Jin-Woo's eyes narrowed a fraction. So they want to control me. Logan leaned forward. They want to cut you open. Jin-Woo did not blink. They can try. Beast cleared his throat. Please don't say it like that. Jin-Woo looked at him. It's true. Xavier lifted his hand, guiding the tone back toward calm. Jin-Woo, I want to ask you something important. Jin-Woo turned to him. Ask. Xavier's voice stayed soft. Your soldiers, the ones made from shadow. You said they were people. What do you believe they are now? Jin-Woo's gaze lowered. For a second, it looked like he was seeing something far away. They died, he said. I didn't make them die. They died in gates, or in battles. Some were monsters. Some were humans. Now they are shadows. Storm held her breath. This was the line people would never understand. Life and death, twisted into a weapon. Xavier continued carefully. Do they have choice? Jin-Woo's eyes lifted. No. Logan snarled. Quiet. That's messed up. Jin-Woo didn't argue. He didn't defend it with speeches. He only said, they follow my orders. That's how I keep people alive. Beast frowned. But if they were people, they're not people anymore, Jin-Woo said, flat and certain. If you want to call me a monster for it, do it. But don't pretend this world is clean. Storm flinched at the truth in that. Scott stepped forward. We have rules here. No summoning inside the mansion. No shadows near the students. You leave the grounds, you tell us. Jin-Woo's eyes met his. You said that before. And you didn't agree, Scott said. I won't be trapped, Jin-Woo answered. Same calm steel as before. Xavier watched them both. Scott, we cannot demand obedience from someone who is not our student. And we cannot pretend he's not a walking crisis, Scott replied. Storm's voice cut in. He is also a person, and he saved lives in that tunnel. Logan's mouth twisted. So did Magneto once. At that name, the room shifted. Xavier's eyes stayed calm, but Storm felt the weight behind the history. Jin-Woo's gaze flicked between their faces. Magneto, he repeated, testing the sound. Scott didn't like saying it out loud. A powerful mutant leader, sometimes a hero, sometimes not. Jin-Woo considered that quiet. Beast couldn't stop himself. Do you remember the moment you became stronger? The moment you first saw the system? Was it text? Icons? A menu? Logan groaned. Hank. Jin-Woo looked at Beast like he was an odd animal. You keep asking. Yes, Beast said, too eager. Because if I can understand the mechanism, you can't see it, Jin-Woo said. It's in my head. Beast's shoulders slumped like he had been denied oxygen. Tragic. Storm almost smiled, despite everything. Almost. A soft knock came at the door. Jean Grey stepped in, her face pale. Her eyes were focused like she had been listening to something only she could hear. "Charles," she said quietly, "something is watching. Not like a person. Like a pressure. It flares when he uses the shadows." Storm felt cold run down her spine. "Cosmic." Jean nodded slightly. "It's not attacking, it's noticing." Jin-Woo looked at Jean. "Watching who?" Jean's voice was honest. "You." Jin-Woo's face did not change, but his posture shifted a hair, like a hunter realizing the forest had a second predator. Scott exhaled slowly. "Great. As if we needed more." The meeting ended without perfect answers. It ended with the same uneasy truth. Jin-Woo would not be controlled. The X-Men would not relax. Later, Storm found Jin-Woo outside, standing under the trees near the edge of the property. He looked up at the sky like he was checking weather, even though the weather was calm. Storm stepped beside him. She didn't crowd him. She gave him space. "You are calm," she said. Jin-Woo's voice was quiet. "It's safer." Storm looked at his hands. No tremble. No fidget. "Do you feel guilty about your shadows?" He took a moment before answering. "Guilt doesn't change results." "That is not an answer," Storm said. Jin-Woo's gaze stayed on the sky. "I don't enjoy it," he said finally, "but I won't throw away a tool that saves lives." Storm understood hard choices. She also understood how those choices could eat a person from the inside. Down in the city, those hard choices became politics. Government meetings happened behind closed doors. Orchis spokespeople spoke in public with clean smiles. They said words like safety and containment. They said words like threat and anomaly. In a hidden Orchis lab, the shadow sample sat in a sealed case. It moved like it was alive, pressing against the glass like it wanted air. A scientist in a white coat whispered, "It reacts to light levels. It's like it hates illumination." A supervisor behind him spoke into a secure line. "Keep it stable. We have partners." The scientist hesitated. "Partners?" The supervisor smiled without warmth. "People who collect rare things." Not far away, in another place that smelled like chemicals and old money, a man watched the same footage with delight. Nathaniel Essex, Mr. Sinister, leaned forward, elbows on a clean table, chin on his hands like a child watching a magic show. His eyes glittered. "Oh, that is lovely," he murmured. A screen showed Jin-Woo lifting shadows to hold up a collapsing tunnel roof. It showed shadow soldiers moving like trained units. It showed Nimrod's drones taking a sample. Sinister laughed softly. "Orchis thinks they've caught a fish. They have caught a piece of the ocean." A figure in the shadows of the room, an assistant, nervous, cleared their throat. "Sir, he's dangerous." Sinister waved a hand as if shooing a fly. "Dangerous is boring. Interesting is rare." He stood, cape-like coat swaying behind him, and walked to a board covered in photos of mutants, DNA charts, facility maps, names scribbled in sharp, neat lines. He added one more image, Jin-Woo's face, captured mid-turn in the tunnel. Sinister tapped the photo. "Who are you, Shadow King? And how do you work?" He smiled wider. "Let's not punch him. Let's tempt him. Let's corner him with something he can't ignore." Back at the Institute, Scott tried to do what he always did when the world got chaotic. He tried to create order. He set patrol schedules. He doubled training for the older students. He requested new security checks. He asked Xavier for permission to prepare countermeasures. Storm watched him work like a man building a dam while the river rose. Logan found Jin-Woo in the training yard, standing alone. "You spar?" Logan asked. Jin-Woo looked at him. "If it helps." Logan cracked his neck. "Good. Because I need to know what you do when you're pushed." Jin-Woo nodded once. "Fine." They fought without an audience. Logan came in low and fast, claws aimed for tendons, because Logan always fought to end things quickly. Jin-Woo stepped aside like he had read the line before it started. He didn't block with his body. He let shadows catch the angle, like moving a wall into place. Logan slashed, sparks flying off, nothing visible. Jin-Woo tapped Logan's wrist lightly, redirecting. Not hurting. Testing. Logan pulled back, eyes narrowed. "You're holding back." Jin-Woo's voice was calm. "This is your home." Logan grunted, both annoyed and slightly respectful. "Don't get soft on me." Jin-Woo didn't smile. "I don't get soft." Logan lunged again, harder. Jin-Woo moved like a blink, suddenly behind Logan, hand on Logan's shoulder. Not a strike, a position. Logan froze for half a second, feeling the point. Jin-Woo let go and stepped away. Logan stared, then huffed. "Okay, you're not stupid." Jin-Woo's eyes stayed steady. "Neither are you." That night, Xavier sat alone in the Cerebro room. He listened to the world's minds like waves. Fear rose in thick clusters. Anger flared like sparks. Hope existed, smaller, but still there. Then he felt a familiar magnetic presence sliding toward the edge of his awareness. Eric. Magneto did not sneak. He never had. He arrived like a statement. The next day, the Institute's gates trembled. Metal on the property hinges, fences, distant car frames hummed in response. Storm rushed outside with Scott and Logan. A sleek shape hovered beyond the gate, made of bent metal and pure force. Magneto stood on it like a king on a throne. His cape moved gently in the wind. Behind him, a few followers waited at a distance, staying back like respectful guards. Storm's face hardened. "Eric." Magneto's eyes flicked to her, then to Scott, then to Logan. He smiled a little. "Aurora," he said warmly. "Scott, Logan." "State your business," Scott said, already braced. Magneto's gaze shifted past them, toward the mansion, toward the shadows under the trees. "I'm not here for you," Magneto said. "I'm here for him." Jin-Woo stepped out from the side path without rushing. He walked like he had been expecting this. Magneto's eyes locked on Jin-Woo. For a moment, the air felt like two storms facing each other. "You," Magneto said. "You arrived like a myth." Jin-Woo didn't react to the drama. "You're Magneto." Magneto's smile widened. "So they told you." "They told me you're powerful," Jin-Woo said. Magneto lifted his chin slightly. "Power recognizes power." Storm stepped between them a fraction. "Eric, don't." Magneto didn't look away from Jin-Woo. "They will fear you," he said. "They will hunt you. They will call you a monster. I know that story better than most." Jin-Woo's eyes narrowed slightly. "So what do you want?" Magneto's voice was calm, almost gentle. "Stand with mutants, not as a student in a school, as a force, as a wall between us and extermination." Scott's fists clenched. "This isn't a recruitment fair." Magneto ignored him. "With you, the Sentinels become scrap. Orchis becomes a memory. You can end the hunt." Jin-Woo looked at him for a long moment. Then he asked a simple question. "If I stand with you," Jin-Woo said, "how many people die?" Magneto's eyes sharpened. "Fewer than if you stand with them." "That's not an answer," Jin-Woo replied, mirroring Storm's earlier words. A flicker of irritation crossed Magneto's face. He wasn't used to being questioned like that by someone who wasn't afraid. "You think this is a math problem," Magneto said. Jin-Woo's voice stayed flat. "Everything is." Storm held her breath. This could go wrong fast. Magneto stepped closer, still outside the gate, but near enough that the air felt tight. "You come from a world of monsters," Magneto said. "This world has monsters too. They wear suits, they build machines, they smile while they cage children." Jin-Woo's eyes went cold. "I noticed." Magneto spread his hands. "Then join the side that fights back." Jin-Woo didn't step forward. He didn't step back. "I won't be someone's weapon," he said. Magneto's smile faded. "You already are. You simply haven't chosen who holds the leash." Jin-Woo's shadow shifted under his feet, like it didn't like that word. Scott took a step forward. "Eric, leave." Magneto finally glanced at Scott, amused, still playing soldier. Then he turned back to Jin-Woo. "I will not force you today," Magneto said. "But the offer stands. When Orchis comes for you, remember who told you the truth first." He lifted two fingers to his temple like a mock salute, then drifted backward. The metal platform rose and slid away. The hum faded. Storm released a breath she hadn't realized she held. Scott turned to Jin-Woo. That's what I mean. Everyone will try to use you. Jin-Woo watched the empty sky Magneto left behind. Let them try. The day continued. Classes continued. Training continued. Fear did not. Late that evening, an alert came in from a mutant support line in the city. A safe clinic that treated mutants quietly. No questions, no judgment. Storm recognized the voice on the call. A woman who had risked her life helping kids. Storm, the woman whispered. Someone's here. They're not police. They're too clean. They have... The line crackled. Storm's face went sharp. Say it. What do they have? Smiles, the woman said, and the line went dead. Scott was already moving, grabbing his gear. Team up, now. Jean pressed her fingers to her temple, eyes going distant. I can't read them well. There's something... masked. Logan growled. Orchis. Beast's hands flew over a keyboard. Security feeds come on. The feed popped up for half a second. White hallway. Clean floors. A clinic door, then static. Storm's skin went cold. They cut it. A few minutes later, a package arrived at the Institute's gate. No explosion, no poison, just a small black box. Inside was a phone. It was already ringing. Scott stared at it, jaw tight, then answered on speaker. This is Cyclops. A voice on the other end was cheerful, like a man making dinner reservations. Good evening, the voice said. We have a mutual interest. Storm's eyes narrowed. Who are you? The voice chuckled. Oh, I have many names, but you may call me a collector. Scott's visor tilted slightly, as if he could glare harder through glass. Where are the people from that clinic? A safe place, the voice said lightly. For now, no need to panic. Logan's claws slid out. I'm panicking. The voice ignored him. We would like to meet your newcomer, the Shadow Gentleman. Bring him alone. Midnight. Old Industrial District. We will send coordinates. Storm's fists clenched. You harm them, we. Oh, you will do nothing rash, the voice said, still pleasant, because they will die, and I know you don't like that. The call ended. A message pinged onto the phone, a location. Scott looked at the screen, then at Xavier, then at Jin-Woo, who had stood in the doorway without anyone calling him. He had heard everything. Jin-Woo's face was calm, but his eyes were darker now. They want me, he said. Storm stepped toward him. This is a trap. Jin-Woo nodded. Yes. Scott's voice was firm. Then we go together. Jin-Woo looked at him. They sat alone. Logan barked a humorless laugh. Yeah, and I say I'm Santa. Jin-Woo's gaze flicked to Logan. If we go loud, they kill hostages. Scott's jaw tightened harder. So we do it smart. Jin-Woo looked between them. I'll go. Storm's heart clenched. Jin-Woo. He raised one hand slightly, not as a threat, as a simple stop. I won't let people die for me, he said. And in that moment, Storm understood him better than all the tests and scans could. He was not here to be worshipped. He was here to hunt threats, even if it meant walking into the dark alone. Near midnight, the Institute was quiet on the surface. But Scott was not the kind of man who slept when a plan was in motion. He stood in the hangar, talking low with Storm and Jean and Logan. Beast hovered nearby, wringing his hands like he wanted to glue himself to the mission. We shadow him, Scott said. At distance, no direct contact unless we confirm the hostages are safe. Logan cracked his knuckles. Or we just rip the place apart. Scott shot him a look. And kill the hostages with falling concrete? No. Logan growled but didn't argue. He knew Scott was right. Jean's eyes narrowed. There's still that watching feeling. It's stronger near him, like something is leaning in. Storm's voice was quiet. Phoenix. Jean swallowed. Maybe. Beast blurted. Could it be reacting to the same dimensional signature as his gate? Logan pointed at him. Blue. Not now. Beast sighed. Fine, but I'm right. Jin-Woo stood near the jet ramp. already ready. No costume, no mask. Like he didn't need either. Scott stepped up to him. "We're not letting you do this alone." Jin-Woo's eyes stayed calm. "Then don't get caught." Scott almost smiled at the bluntness. "Almost." Jin-Woo tilted his head slightly. "Rank?" Scott frowned. "Stop asking me that." Beast raised a finger. "He's gauging threat level. It helps him plan." Scott exhaled once. "Fine. It's high rank." Jin-Woo nodded. "Srank trap." Storm's mouth twitched despite herself. "You keep saying that like it's normal." Jin-Woo's voice was flat. "It is." He stepped into the shadow under the jet's wing and vanished. Scott clenched his fists. "He can do that whenever he wants." "Which means," Jean said, "if he wanted to hurt us, he would have already." That didn't comfort Scott as much as it should have. The industrial district was a dead part of the city. Empty warehouses, rusted signs, broken windows. The air smelled like wet cement and old oil. Jin-Woo appeared in an alley shadow, then walked out openly. He didn't sneak. He didn't posture. A door stood ahead, metal and unmarked. Two men in clean suits waited beside it, no weapons showing, perfect hair, calm faces. Their smiles were too practiced. One of them spoke as Jin-Woo approached. "You must be our guest." Jin-Woo stopped 10 feet away. "Where are they?" The suited man smiled wider. Straight to business, efficient. Jin-Woo didn't move. "Answer." The second suited man nodded toward the door. "Inside." Jin-Woo stepped forward. The door opened by itself. Not by magic, by a hidden mechanism. The hallway beyond was too clean for a warehouse. White lights, smooth floors. The air smelled like disinfectant. Jin-Woo's eyes narrowed. Lab. The suited man's smile stayed. A place of learning. Jin-Woo walked in. The door shut behind him. Scott watched from a distant rooftop through binoculars, jaw tight. Storm stood beside him, cloak pulled close. Jean's eyes were closed, mind reaching. Logan crouched near the edge, muscles tight like springs. "I hate this." Scott didn't argue. "I know." Inside the hallway, Jin-Woo felt the trap in the walls. It wasn't just cameras. It was light. Bright, harsh, steady light. No shadows deep enough to hide in. Someone had designed this place to fight him. Jin-Woo kept walking anyway. A second door opened. A large room waited beyond it. Lab tables, tanks, machines with long arms, screens showing live video feeds. And in the center, behind a clear barrier, were the hostages. A dozen mutants from the clinic, adults and teenagers, hands bound, faces bruised, alive. Storm's breath caught through the comm. "They're alive." Scott nodded once, hard. "Good. Hold." Jin-Woo stepped closer to the barrier. A man leaned casually against a table on the other side of the room, watching Jin-Woo like he was watching a stage show. He was pale, with a sharp face and a wide smile. He wore a fancy coat like he wanted attention. "Mr. Sinister." He clapped slowly, like he had waited all day for this moment. "Well," Sinister said brightly, "you're real. I hate when my toys turn out to be rumors." Jin-Woo's face stayed calm. "Let them go." Sinister chuckled. "No greeting?" "No, who are you?" "I don't care," Jin-Woo said. Sinister's eyes gleamed. "Oh, I like you. Straight lines, simple wants." He pushed off the table and walked closer, stopping a safe distance away, like he understood danger. "You're not from here," Sinister said, "and yet you fit so perfectly into our little hate-filled world." Jin-Woo stared at him. "You're the one who called." Sinister spread his hands. "Guilty." Jin-Woo's shadow stirred under his feet, thin and restless. The room's lights tried to flatten it. Sinister noticed and smiled. "Uh-huh. We adjusted the lighting. No need to be dramatic." Jin-Woo's voice didn't change. "You have 3 seconds." Sinister tilted his head, amused. 3? 1, Jin-Woo said. Sinister's smile tightened just a little. "You're not used to bargaining, are you?" 2. Sinister sighed like a man bored at a meeting. "Fine, let's bargain." He tapped a button on a control panel. A sidewall lit up with a screen showing the tunnel footage again. It zoomed in on the small drone grabbing the shadow sample. "We have a piece of you," Sinister said. "Not much, but enough to start." Jin-Woo's eyes went colder. "Give it back." Sinister laughed. "Oh no, that's not how science works." He strolled closer, still careful. "Here is what I want, Shadow King. I want your source, your link, your monarch side." Jin-Woo didn't blink. "No." Sinister's smile stayed, but his eyes sharpened. "And here is what you want. These people alive." Jin-Woo's voice was flat. "Let them go and you live." Sinister's laugh turned light again. "Threats. Lovely. But no." He snapped his fingers. From the ceiling, metal shapes dropped small sentinels, built for indoors, with smooth armor and bright emitters. They didn't attack Jin-Woo first. They aimed at the hostages. Scott's whole body went tense on the rooftop. No. Storm's hands lifted, ready to move wind even from far away, even though she knew she might not reach them in time. Jean's eyes opened wide. He's forcing a choice. Jin-Woo moved, but the room fought him. The lights flared. Hidden emitters turned on, washing the floor with harsh white pulses. The shadows under Jin-Woo thinned, like they were being pushed flat. One sentinel fired a net of light toward Jin-Woo's feet. The net stuck to the floor and burned at the edge of his shadow like it was acid. Jin-Woo's jaw tightened. Not in fear, in anger. He took one step forward anyway. Shadow rose behind him in a tight column, forced, squeezed out of the thin darkness like water through a narrow pipe. A single soldier formed smaller than usual, but solid. The soldier lunged and slammed into the sentinel, driving it back. Sinister's eyes widened slightly. "Oh, you can still do it." Through the floodlights. "Wonderful." Jin-Woo didn't waste time. He shadow-stepped short, imperfect, but enough to a spot near the hostage barrier. Another light net fired. Jin-Woo raised his hand. A shadow shield formed for half a second, caught the net, and cracked like glass. It held long enough. He reached the control panel by the barrier. Sinister clicked his tongue. Now. You really are the boring kind of hero." Jin-Woo didn't answer. He grabbed the panel and crushed it in his hand. Sparks flew. The barrier flickered. One hostage screamed as the room's lights surged again, reacting. Sinister's voice turned sharp. "Careful. You break the wrong thing, they die." Jin-Woo froze for a fraction of a second. Scott whispered, "That's it. He's got him. He's trapped him with risk." Logan growled, "We go." Scott held up a hand. "Not yet. We need eyes on an exit route." Jean's mind pushed outward, searching. There are more rooms, more guards. This place is layered. Inside, Jin-Woo stared through the barrier at the hostages. A teenage boy with a bandaged forehead stared back, eyes shaking with fear. Jin-Woo saw himself, once, weak, helpless, waiting for someone stronger to care. He turned back to Sinister. "Move them out," Jin-Woo said. "Now." Sinister lifted his chin. "Give me the source." Jin-Woo's voice dropped. "You won't survive long enough to use it." Sinister smiled again, but it was thinner now. "You think I'm some Orchis accountant hiding behind machines. I have survived legends." Jin-Woo took a slow breath. Then he did something Sinister didn't expect. He lowered his hand. He stopped trying to force shadows through the light. Instead, he looked at the lights, and he looked at the ceiling, and he looked at the machines. He treated the room like a dungeon puzzle. Jin-Woo moved fast. He hurled a broken piece of the control panel into a ceiling emitter. It shattered. The room's light dipped for half a second. That half second made a real shadow. Jin-Woo stepped into it. He appeared behind a row of machines and ripped a thick cable out of the wall. Sparks sprayed. More lights flickered. Shadows deepened. One shadow soldier rose. Then two. Then four. Sinister's smile broke into real excitement. "Yes, adapt. Please adapt." Jin-Woo didn't play the show. He moved with clean purpose. The shadow soldiers charged the sentinels guarding the hostages. They didn't fight like wild monsters. They fought like a squad clearing a path. Jin-Woo shadow stepped to the barrier again. With more darkness now, his movement was smoother. He slammed his fist into the barrier's frame, not the glass. Metal bent. The barrier died with a hiss, sliding open. Storm's breath escaped her in relief. He did it. The hostages stumbled out, coughing and blinking at the harsh light. A sentinel aimed at a child. Jin-Woo moved in front of the child and took the blast on a shadow shield that cracked but held. Sinister's voice turned cold. Fine. He pressed another button. The floor beneath the hostages lit up with glowing lines, forming cages made of hard light. Bars rose, snapping into place around them. The cages weren't meant to hold Jin-Woo. They were meant to hold them, to make them bait. Jin-Woo's eyes sharpened. His shadows surged, trying to cut the bars, but the light resisted like steel. Sinister smiled again, crueler now. See? You can fight all day, but you can't save everyone at once. Above, Scott's voice snapped through the comm. Now. Storm didn't argue. She leapt from the rooftop, wind catching her like a hand. She flew toward the building, eyes glowing, calling storm pressure into the air. Logan jumped after her, landing on a lower roof and sprinting like a missile. Jean followed behind, lifting herself with telekinesis, face tight with focus. Inside the lab, Jin-Woo made a choice in a heartbeat. He didn't keep trading punches with machines. He targeted the weak point. Sinister. Jin-Woo shadow-stepped, appearing in front of Sinister so fast that the air seemed to snap. Sinister's eyes widened. Jin-Woo grabbed Sinister's throat with one hand and lifted him off the floor. Sinister's boots kicked lightly, not in panic, more in surprise. Jin-Woo's voice was low. Open the cages. Sinister smiled, even while held. Oh, you're fun. Jin-Woo's grip tightened just enough to make the message clear. Sinister raised one finger and tapped Jin-Woo's wrist like a joke. A hidden needle snapped out and injected something into Jin-Woo's arm. Jin-Woo didn't flinch, but his shadow flickered. For a half-second, his connection wobbled like a radio losing signal. Sinister's smile widened, delighted. There it is. A reaction. Jin-Woo's eyes went dead cold. He slammed Sinister into a table hard enough to crack it. Sinister coughed, still smiling. Yes, do that again. Jin-Woo didn't. He wasn't there to satisfy a madman. He shoved Sinister across the floor, then turned back to the cages. The hostages were crying. Some were trying to bend the light bars with their powers. It wasn't working. Jin-Woo's shadow soldiers hacked at the bars, but the light fought them. Storm crashed through the ceiling in a controlled blast of wind, landing like a queen of storms with her eyes glowing bright. Enough, she said. The air pressure dropped. The lights flickered as wind ripped at the wiring. Jean followed, landing softly, hands raised. She grabbed the light cages with telekinesis and strained, trying to bend them, to twist them. They're anchored, Jean hissed. There's a generator. Scott slammed through a side door next, optic blast cutting a sentinel in half. He scanned the room in 1 second. Hostages, Jin-Woo, Sinister, machines. Storm, hostages, he called. Jean, find the generator. Logan. Logan was already in. He hit a sentinel like it owed him money, claws tearing through metal. Jin-Woo didn't stop when the X-Men arrived. He didn't become grateful and soft. He stayed focused. He pointed to a wall panel with a thin line of shadow under it. Generator room. Behind there. Scott looked at him for one sharp moment, then nodded. Jean. Jean shot forward, ripping the wall panel open with telekinesis, then slamming her force into the room beyond. A deep hum died. The light cages flickered. Storm sent a gust that shattered the remaining emitters. The cages collapsed into nothing. Hostages fell to their knees, sobbing with relief. Sinister clapped from the floor, hair messy, smile bright as ever. Marvelous. Teamwork. It's almost sweet. Logan stalked toward him, claws out. I'm gonna take that smile off your face. Sinister's eyes glittered. Try. Scott raised his hand. No, he wants you close. Logan froze. shaking with restraint. Sinister's gaze slid to Jin-Woo again. "You're not from here," he said softly, "but you belong in my collection." Jin-Woo stepped toward him, calm returning like a mask. "You're done." Sinister's smile didn't fade. "Oh, I'm never done." He pressed something small on his wrist. The room shook. A hidden exit opened behind Sinister like a mouth. Smoke poured out thick and strange, designed to confuse sensors and minds. Jean's eyes widened. "It's blocking my sight." Storm's wind whipped through it, trying to clear it, but the smoke clung like it didn't want to move. Sinister backed into the opening, still smiling at Jin-Woo. "Thank you for coming," he called. "I learned so much." Jin-Woo shadow-stepped to chase, and slammed into a wall of pure light. A final trap. A hard light curtain flashed on, sealing the exit. Sinister's grin showed through it for one last second. Then the curtain went opaque as he slipped away. Jin-Woo's eyes narrowed. He raised his hand to tear the light curtain apart. Scott grabbed his shoulder firm. "No. We got the hostages. That's the win." Jin-Woo's gaze stayed on the sealed door. His voice was low. "He has my sample." Beast's voice crackled through comms from outside. "And now we know he can plan around you. That is bad." Logan spat on the floor. "We should have killed him." Storm turned toward the freed mutants, guiding them out with wind and calm words. "We save people first," she said, sharp enough that even Logan heard the command in it. John stood near Jin-Woo, watching him carefully. "That needle," she said quietly. "Did it hurt you?" Jin-Woo flexed his arm once. "It tried." Jean's eyes narrowed. "He's studying you." Jin-Woo's voice stayed flat. "Everyone is." Outside, Orchis alarms started to wail. The lab's systems were dying. Sirens rose in the distance. Scott's face hardened. "We leave. Now." They moved fast, escorting hostages through broken hallways and out into the night air. Storm carried 2 injured people with wind support so their legs didn't buckle. Jean kept a gentle calm in the hostages' minds so panic didn't turn into stampede. Logan stayed at the rear, tearing apart any machine that tried to follow. Jin-Woo walked in silence, eyes scanning rooftops and shadows, like he expected a second trap. They reached the edge of the industrial district, where the Blackbird could land in a quick, hidden drop. As the last hostage stepped into safety, Jin-Woo finally turned away from the ruined lab. His shadow soldiers melted back into the ground, one by one, like soldiers returning to barracks. Scott's voice was tight the moment they were alone. "You left," Scott said. Jin-Woo looked at him. "I went to stop a trap." "You went alone," Scott corrected. "After we agreed you wouldn't." Jin-Woo's eyes didn't flinch. "I agreed to most." Scott's fists clenched. "You could have gotten them killed." Jin-Woo's voice stayed calm, but it hit like a blade. "If I waited for permission, they would be dead." Storm stepped between them before the argument became something worse. Her voice was steady. "He saved them." Scott didn't look away. "And he taught our enemies how to bait him." Jin-Woo's gaze flicked to the hostages being treated by medics inside the jet. "They were bait," he said. "Not me." Logan crossed his arms, looking angry and impressed at the same time. "He did good work in there." Scott shot him a look. "Don't start." Logan shrugged. "What?" "I like people who hate cages." Jean watched Jin-Woo, quieter than the rest. She could feel the strange heat again, faint but present, like a distant sun looking over the edge of space. Something was still watching. Jin-Woo turned toward the broken skyline, eyes calm, voice simple. "Your enemies don't wait for meetings," he said. Scott's jaw tightened, but he didn't have a clean answer. Storm looked at Jin-Woo and saw the truth behind the words. This world was not a dungeon, but it was still a hunt. And now, everyone knew it. 2 weeks after the warehouse lab, the mansion felt the same on the outside. Inside, it did not. Students still went to class. The kitchen still smelled like coffee in the morning. Wolverine still complained about everything. Beast still talked too much. But there were new rules that no one had written on a board. People listened harder when the news came on. People checked the sky more. and people looked at shadows like they might move. Jin-Woo kept to a simple routine. He woke before sunrise, even when no one asked him to. He walked the property line once, slow and quiet, eyes always scanning. He trained in the danger room like it was a gate, not a gym. He did not joke much. He did not brag at all. He just got ready. Scott Summers watched all of it from a distance at first. He did not stalk Jin-Woo like a villain. He did it like a commander guarding a camp. Every time Jin-Woo stepped into a shadow and vanished, Scott's jaw tightened. Every time a student looked at Jin-Woo with curiosity, Scott's shoulders tensed. Not because Scott hated Jin-Woo, because Scott could see the future problem. Plain as day. Power this big always pulled people in, and the wrong people always pulled hardest. One afternoon, Scott stood behind the control glass of the danger room. Storm stood beside him, arms folded. Inside, Jin-Woo faced a simulated sentinel unit. The room displayed a subway platform, bright lights, clean floors, and a crowd of fake civilians running in panic. The sentinels were big, loud, and fast. Jin-Woo was still. Then he moved. He didn't start with a flood of shadows. He started with saving people. He stepped into a thin shadow under a bench, appeared behind the fake crowd, and guided them out with short, direct motions. He didn't touch them hard. He didn't shout. He just moved them to safety like he had done it 1,000 times. Then he attacked. A shadow shield formed to block a beam that would have hit the crowd. A shadow chain snapped up to pin a sentinel arm. A shadow soldier rose, struck a knee joint, and made the machine stumble. But Jin-Woo didn't let the fight become messy. He didn't blow up the whole platform. He didn't drop the ceiling. He kept it controlled. Scott watched closely. "He's learning," he said. Storm nodded. "He's choosing." Scott's eyes stayed tight. "Or he's practicing." Storm turned to him. "Scott, he could have vanished with our secrets the first night. He didn't." Scott didn't look away. "That doesn't mean he won't." Storm's voice dropped. "Or it means he won't." Scott didn't answer. Inside the room, Jin-Woo finished the simulation by doing something that surprised even Beast. He didn't crush the last sentinel. He disabled it. He shadow-stepped behind it, slammed his hand into the back panel, and ripped out a core cable like he was pulling a snake out of a hole. The sentinel dropped. Quiet. Jin-Woo stepped back and let his shadows sink into the floor. He looked up at the control glass, calm as always. Scott met his gaze. Jin-Woo spoke first, through the room speakers. That was B rank. Scott frowned. "Stop rating our problems." Storm's mouth twitched. She couldn't help it. What would be A rank? Jin-Woo's face stayed flat. Nimrod. Scott's expression hardened again. Storm glanced at Scott. He's not wrong. After training, Beast caught Jin-Woo in the hall like a bright blue ambush. Hank held a tablet full of charts. "Jin-Woo, wonderful timing. I have analyzed the chemical agent Sinister injected into you." Logan walked past and muttered, "Of course you did." Beast ignored him. It wasn't poison. It was a signal disruptor, a frequency tool. It tried to interfere with your shadow connection. Jin-Woo nodded once. "It failed." Beast beamed. "Yes, which is incredible. It implies your link is not simply energy. It is a rule, a command structure." Jin-Woo started to walk away. Beast hurried with him, refusing to be left behind. "If you could just describe your system again. The interface, the prompts. Do you see words, icons, a menu?" Jin-Woo glanced at him. "You keep asking." "Yes," Beast said, almost pleading now. "Because it matters." Jin-Woo's answer was the same as before. "You can't see it. It's only in my head." Beast sighed like a man watching his dream float away. Tragic. Jin-Woo paused, then added very calmly, "If it helps, it's annoying." Beast blinked. "Annoying?" Jin-Woo nodded. "It never stops counting." Beast stared at him for one long second, then burst into delighted laughter. "Oh, you're marvelous." Jin-Woo kept walking. His face did not change. But Logan, passing the other way, snorted like he found it funny too. Small things like that happened more often. A student started leaving a chair slightly pulled out in the common room because Jin-Woo always chose the seat with the clearest view of the door. A younger kid stopped flinching when a shadow crossed the wall. Storm noticed Jin-Woo sometimes stood at the edge of the property when school buses drove past on the far road. He watched them like someone counting possible threats, even when there were none. Jean noticed something else. The watching pressure came and went, but it always returned when Jin-Woo used a lot of shadow power. One night, she found him alone near the back field. The grass was dark. The sky was clear. He wasn't summoning soldiers. He wasn't training. He was just standing there, still. Jean kept her voice soft. "Do you feel it?" Jin-Woo didn't turn his head. "Yes." Jean swallowed. "It feels like a big thing looking down, like a sun that knows your name." Jin-Woo's eyes stayed on the trees. "In my world, something big always notices." Jean's fingers pressed lightly to her temple, not to read him, but to steady herself. "It doesn't feel angry. It feels curious." Jin-Woo finally glanced at her. "Curious things still burn you." Jean gave a small, tired smile. "That is also true." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Jin-Woo said, simple and blunt, "What rank is your mind power?" Jean blinked, caught off guard. "My what?" "You're strong," Jin-Woo said. "How strong?" Jean let out a small laugh through her nerves. "I don't rank it." Jin-Woo nodded as if that was expected. "Everyone here refuses to rank things." Jean's smile widened. "We rank them. We just use different words." Jin-Woo looked back at the dark field. "It would be easier if you didn't." Jean's smile faded slightly. "Easier for who?" Jin-Woo's answer was quiet. "For the people who want to plan against you." That was when Jean understood something important. He wasn't rating threats to show off. He was doing it because he couldn't stop thinking like a hunter. Because hunting had kept him alive. And now it might keep them alive too. The next day, the offer arrived. Not from Magneto. Not from Orchis. From Sinister. It came in the most insulting way possible. A small envelope slid under Jin-Woo's door, even though the Institute gates were watched. The paper was thick and expensive, like it came from someone who wanted you to notice. Inside was a single card. No blood, no hair, no creepy trophy. Just a message written in sharp, clean handwriting. "I can open a door. I can send you home. Meet me alone, and we can trade like civilized monsters." Azaz. Jin-Woo stared at the card for a long time. Then he walked straight to Xavier's office and placed it on the desk without a word. Scott was already there, like he always was when danger showed up. Storm stood near the window. Jean sat with her hands folded, face tight. Xavier looked at the card, calm on the outside, worried inside. "He wants you to come alone." Jin-Woo nodded. "Yes." Scott's voice snapped. "No." Jin-Woo's eyes flicked to Scott. "He says he can send me back." Storm's chest tightened at the simple truth behind that. Of course that was a temptation. Scott's jaw clenched. "It's bait. He'll trap you again." Jin-Woo didn't deny it. "Yes." Jean's voice was quiet. He also might be telling the truth. Beast burst in like a storm of his own, waving a hand. "If Sinister found a way to mimic dimensional access using your shadow sample and Orchis tech," Logan, leaning on the doorframe, groaned. "Blue. Not now." Beast deflated. "Fine." Xavier watched Jin-Woo carefully. "Do you want to go home?" Jin-Woo's face stayed calm, but his answer came slower than usual. "Yes," he said. Storm looked away for a second, because it hurt to hear it so plainly. Xavier nodded. "That is human." Scott stepped forward. "Then you stay here. You don't meet him." Jin-Woo's eyes sharpened. If he can open doors, he can pull more things through. More monsters. More traps. Scott's voice was hard. "Then we stop him." Jin-Woo met his gaze and said the thing Scott didn't want to hear. "You can't," Jin-Woo said. "Not if you play by rules he doesn't follow." Logan's mouth twisted. "He's got a point, Summers." Scott shot him a look. "Don't." Xavier lifted a hand. gentle but firm. Jin-Woo, if you go, you risk your life. Jin-Woo nodded. I risk it anyway. Jin's voice dropped. And if he really can send you home, would you take it? Jin-Woo stared at the card again. His fingers tightened slightly, then relaxed. No, he said. Storm's eyes lifted. No? Jin-Woo's voice was simple. Not like that. Scott frowned. Explain. Jin-Woo finally looked up. If I trade my source to go home, he uses it here. People die because I wanted peace. He said it like it was basic math, like anything else would be stupid. Storm felt something in her chest loosen. Xavier's eyes softened. Then what will you do? Jin-Woo slid the card back into the envelope, calm returning to the surface. Nothing. I won't meet him. Scott exhaled, sharp. Good. Jin-Woo added, but I'll be ready when he moves. Scott didn't love that, but he accepted it. For a few days, nothing happened. That was the worst part, because everyone knew something was coming. And it came in the brightest, most public way possible. Orchis announced a safety operation in Manhattan. They didn't hide it. They invited cameras. They invited officials. They set up barricades in a busy part of the city, near a park where people walked and bought hot dogs and took pictures. They rolled out a new Sentinel squad in broad daylight. The message was clear. Look, we can control this. Don't worry, we have machines. And if you're a mutant watching at home, be afraid. Scott stood in the Blackbird as the news played on a screen. A reporter smiled too much. Orchis says this is a non-lethal patrol designed to prevent mutant-related incidents. Storm's voice turned cold. Non-lethal. That's what they always say. Logan cracked his knuckles. So we crashed the party. Scott shook his head. Not like that. They want us on camera. They want us to look like criminals. Beast tapped keys, pulling data. They've set up signal jammers, drone nets, and oh dear floodlights. John's face tightened. Anti-shadow. Scott looked at Jin-Woo, who stood silent near the ramp. This is about you too, Scott said. Jin-Woo nodded once. Yes. Scott's jaw tightened. If you show up and unleash an army, they'll sell it as proof you're a threat. Jin-Woo's eyes stayed steady. Then I won't unleash an army. Logan barked a laugh. You got an only half an army setting? Jin-Woo looked at him. Yes. Logan blinked. Wait, seriously? Jin-Woo didn't smile. I can choose. Storm felt relief and fear at the same time. Relief that he could control it. Fear that he had to. They arrived above the city and watched from a distance first. Below, Orcus sentinels marched in a clean line through the street, lights mounted on their shoulders like moving suns. Drones hovered overhead. Loudspeakers played calm instructions. A crowd gathered behind barricades. People filmed. Some cheered. Some shouted insults. Some shouted at the X-Men even though the X-Men weren't there. Then the sweep accidentally moved toward a mutant community center. Storm's eyes narrowed. That's not an accident. Scott's voice was tight. They're forcing contact. Jean's hands clenched. There are kids inside. Logan's growl was low and dangerous. Now we go. Scott nodded once. Now. They dropped in fast. Storm came first, landing near the community center with a gust that pushed civilians back from the street without hurting them. Her voice boomed, sharp and clear. Everyone inside, away from the machines. Some listened, some didn't. Cameras were everywhere. Fear makes people do stupid things. Cyclops landed beside Storm, stance wide, visor angled at the sentinels. He raised one hand to the crowd. Back behind the barricades, he ordered. Now. Logan moved like a blade through space, already cutting drone cables and tearing down net launchers before they could fire. Jean hovered slightly above the ground, eyes focused, reaching into the crowd's minds to calm panic and stop stampedes. Jin-Woo appeared in a thin shadow behind a parked truck, then stepped out into daylight. The floodlights snapped toward him instantly. A sentinel voice spoke, smooth and loud for the cameras. Anomalous entity detected. Surrender for containment. Jin-Woo's face did not change. He looked like he was reading a mission prompt. Scott's voice came through the comm in Jin-Woo's ear. Minimal display. Save civilians first. Jin-Woo nodded once. The first sentinel fired a net of hard light toward Jin-Woo's feet, trying to pin his shadow to the street. Jin-Woo didn't fight the net directly. He stepped sideways into the shadow of a traffic sign, thin, but enough, and vanished. He appeared on a rooftop edge above, out of the net's reach. The crowd gasped and cheered and screamed all at once. Storm felt the wind shift, not from weather, from human noise. The sentinels adjusted their lights upward. Jin-Woo moved again, shadow stepping across rooftops like skipping stones across water, never staying in one place long enough to be pinned. He wasn't showing off. He was refusing to give Orchis a clean capture shot. Below, a sentinel fired at the community center doors. Storm threw up a wall of wind that bent the blast upward into the sky. Cyclops fired an optic blast that hit the sentinel's shoulder joint, knocking its aim off. Logan leapt onto a sentinel's back and ripped out a panel with a furious snarl. Jean caught a falling street sign with telekinesis and set it down gently so it didn't crush anyone. And still, Orchis kept advancing. Because this wasn't a fight to win. It was a show to sell. A new shape stepped out from behind the line of sentinels. Sleeker, cleaner, smarter. Jean's breath caught. That's him. Scott's stomach sank. Nimrod. Nimrod's head turned slowly, scanning. Its eyes locked onto Jin-Woo's rooftop position. Shadow entity reacquired, Nimrod said. Adaptation update. Complete. A pulse spread from Nimrod's body like a wave. Street shadows thinned. Even the space under cars brightened as hidden flood units activated. Jin-Woo felt his movement options shrink. Not gone. Just narrowed. He exhaled once, slow. Rank? Logan barked over comms, half mocking, half serious. Jin-Woo's voice stayed calm. S rank. Logan grinned like a man who enjoyed bad odds. Good. Nimrod didn't rush Jin-Woo first. It turned its arm into a launcher and fired toward the crowd. Not a lethal blast. A capture web. It spread wide and aimed for the barricades, trying to scoop civilians and mutants together. Storm's eyes widened. No. Jean slammed her telekinesis into the web midair, straining to hold it back. Cyclops fired a narrow blast to cut the web's edge. Logan leapt and tore at the strands with claws. People screamed anyway. Jin-Woo watched the chaos for 1 second, then made the only choice that fit him. He went for the objective. Not Nimrod. The civilians. He stepped into a thin shadow near a billboard and appeared behind the barricades, right beside a terrified father holding a child. The man recoiled. What? Jin-Woo didn't waste words. He lifted the child with one hand and pushed them behind a solid concrete planter. Stay down, he said, calm and firm. Then he raised his other hand. A shadow spread outward from under the planter and the barricade. Not an army. A shield. It rose like a dark wall, tall enough to block the capture web. The web hit the shadow wall and stuck, crackling with light. The wall shook. Jin-Woo's eyes narrowed. He held it anyway. Storm saw it and felt awe hit her clean. He is holding it for strangers. Cyclops realized the same thing. Storm, move the crowd behind his wall. Storm obeyed instantly, wind guiding people into safer pockets. Jean kept minds steady so people didn't crush each other. Logan cut down the last drone that was trying to record from overhead. Nimrod watched Jin-Woo hold the shadow wall. Its voice stayed flat. Shadow defense confirmed. Countermeasure engaged. Nimrod fired a thin beam at the base of Jin-Woo's wall, targeting the shadow source point. The beam hit, and the wall flickered. Jin-Woo's breath tightened for the first time. Not pain, effort. Scott's voice snapped through comms. Jin-Woo, disengage. If it locks your shadow, you're pinned. Jin-Woo didn't move. Because if he moved, the wall dropped. And people died. He made a different move instead. He shifted the wall. He didn't fight the beam head-on. He let the wall's base slide sideways like a door moving on tracks, changing the anchor point. The beam cut empty pavement. Nimrod's head tilted slightly, as if annoyed. Jin-Woo used that tiny moment. He shadow-stepped behind Nimrod. appearing in the narrow shadow under its own body, the one shadow Orchis couldn't erase without erasing physics. Jin-Woo's hand slammed into Nimrod's back plating. He didn't punch randomly. He struck the same spot he had seen the drone bay open in the tunnel. His shadow surged into the seam like a wedge. Metal bent. A compartment cracked open. Nimrod twisted, trying to grab him. Jin-Woo stepped away, clean and fast, before the grip closed. Cyclops saw the opening and fired a focused blast into the cracked compartment. Storm followed with a lightning strike into the same exposed point, precise and controlled so it didn't hit civilians. Nimrod staggered one step. Logan launched himself and tore deeper into the crack with claws, snarling like an animal that finally had something to bite. Nimrod's systems flared. Its voice stayed calm. Damage acknowledged. Primary objective updated. Data extraction. A small drone slipped out anyway, faster than before. It zipped toward Jin-Woo's shadow wall, trying to take another sample. Jin-Woo noticed it instantly. He flicked his fingers. A single shadow soldier rose from the thin darkness under a car, just one, and threw a spear of shadow straight into the drone's path. The spear hit. The drone shattered in midair. The crowd gasped again. Cameras flashed. Fear and awe mixed into a single noisy wave. Nimrod backed away, not stumbling, not panicking. Retreating. Not because it was beaten. Because it had learned enough for today. Encounter logged, Nimrod said. Future adaptation pending. It fired one final wide pulse, more floodlight pressure, more shadow suppression, then launched upward with jets, pulling 2 sentinels with it, like escort units. Orchis speakers kicked on immediately. This operation was successful, the loud voice claimed. Threats were contained. Storm's eyes went furious. Lies. Cyclops didn't let anger take his brain. He scanned the street. People were alive. The community center still stood. No one had been scooped into a cage. That mattered more than winning a headline. Scott stepped close to Jin-Woo as the sentinels withdrew, voice low so cameras wouldn't catch it. You could have crushed Nimrod, Scott said. Jin-Woo's gaze stayed on the retreating machine. Yes. Why didn't you? Scott asked. Jin-Woo's answer was simple. Because then they push harder next time. With more fear. Scott's throat tightened. He didn't like it. But he understood it. Storm walked up beside them, eyes still glowing faintly. You chose control, she said to Jin-Woo. Jin-Woo nodded once. It's safer. Logan wiped oil off his claws, grinning like he wanted to chase the sentinels into the sky anyway. Next time we take its head. Jin-Woo looked at him. Next time it will bring a bigger body. Logan's grin widened. Good. Jeanne floated down, face pale but steady. Her eyes flicked toward Jin-Woo, then upward, like she felt that distant pressure again. It watched, she whispered. Storm frowned. The Phoenix. Jeanne nodded. It didn't move. It just paid attention. Jin-Woo looked at her, calm as ever. Let it watch. They left before Orchis could set a second trap. By night, the news spun the story into 100 versions. Some called the X-Men terrorists. Some called them heroes. Some called Jin-Woo a demon. Some called him a king. Jin-Woo didn't watch any of it. Back at the Institute, Xavier met him in the hall near the library. You made a hard choice today, Xavier said. Jin-Woo nodded. It worked. Xavier's eyes softened. You saved lives. And you did it without becoming what they want you to be. Jin-Woo's voice was quiet. They will still call me a monster. Yes, Xavier admitted. They will. Jin-Woo looked at him. Then why keep trying? Xavier didn't flinch. Because we must. Because the day we stop trying to be better is the day we lose ourselves. Jin-Woo held that gaze for a long moment. Then he said something small, almost personal. In my world, Jin-Woo said, I didn't have a place like this. Xavier smiled gently. You have it now, if you want it. Jin-Woo didn't say yes like a student joining a team. He didn't say no like a lone wolf walking away. He said, I'll stay, for now. It was the closest thing to a promise he could give. And it was enough. Far away, in a quiet lab, Mr. Sinister watched the daytime battle with a grin that never faded. He replayed the moment Jin-Woo shifted the shadow wall anchor point to dodge Nimrod's beam. He leaned closer to the screen and hummed, delighted. "Control," he whispered. "He chooses control." His eyes glittered. That means he can be tempted. On another screen, an Orchis report updated Nimrod's file. New notes, new light patterns, new containment plans. The hunt did not end. It simply leveled up. Later that week, the mansion was quiet in the way it could be quiet. Not safe. Just still. Jin-Woo stood on the roof near midnight, hands at his sides, looking out over trees and distant town lights. He liked rooftops. They gave clean sight lines. He heard footsteps behind him and didn't turn right away. "Thought I'd find you up here," Scott Summers said. Jin-Woo turned his head slightly. "You don't sleep." Scott gave a short, tired breath that almost counted as a laugh. "Neither do you." They stood side by side, not friends, not enemies. Something in between. The night air was cool. The sky was clear. Scott spoke first, voice low. "You could leave any time." Jin-Woo nodded. "Yes." "And you haven't," Scott said. Jin-Woo didn't answer right away. Then he said, simple. "There are people here." Scott's throat tightened. He understood what Jin-Woo meant. Students. Families. A home that could become a battlefield. Scott stared out at the dark tree line. "I don't like not having a plan for you." Jin-Woo's eyes stayed calm. "You can't plan everything." Scott glanced at him. "That drives me insane." Jin-Woo nodded once. "I noticed." For a moment, it was almost a joke. Scott exhaled slowly. "What rank is our world?" he asked, like the words escaped before he could stop them. Jin-Woo looked at him. Then, for the first time since he arrived, the corner of Jin-Woo's mouth lifted a fraction. Not a smile that warmed a room. A small dry sign that he understood humor. "S rank," Jin-Woo said. Scott stared for a second. Then he let out a quiet laugh, short and real. "Of course it is." They stood in silence again. In the distance, a tiny red light blinked from a street pole camera on the road beyond the property. A normal camera, a normal tool. The light blinked again. Then it went dark. Not from a storm, not from a blast. Just dark. A thin shadow passed over it like a hand covering a lens. Jin-Woo didn't move. He didn't even look at it. But Scott saw it, and he understood. Jin-Woo had scouts, not in a creepy way, in a protective way. Scott's voice softened, just a little. "You're guarding." Jin-Woo's answer was quiet. "It's what I do." Scott nodded once, slow. Not full trust, not surrender. Just a small step. Below them, the mansion lights glowed warm in the windows. A few students laughed somewhere inside, safe for one more night. Jin-Woo looked at the sky and said, almost to himself, "Quiet never lasts." Scott didn't argue. He only said, "Then we make it last longer." Jin-Woo didn't reply with a speech. He just stood there, steady as a wall. And the night went on.